The candles have burned almost to nothing. Katherine Howard is 19 years old, and she can hear footsteps coming toward her chamber at Hampton Court. These are not the familiar steps of her ladies-in-waiting, not servants carrying food or fresh linen, not anyone who should be walking these corridors at 11 o'clock at night. Just 6 hours ago, she was Queen of England, the wife of Henry VIII, the most powerful woman in the kingdom, a girl who had climbed from near obscurity to wear the crown Anne Boleyn died for and Jane Seymour died wearing. Now she sits alone in her private rooms, forbidden to leave, surrounded by guards who will not meet her eyes, waiting for something she does not yet fully understand. The king has not come. He has sent no message. Henry, her husband of 16 months, the man who called her his rose without a thorn, the man who covered her in jewels and praised her beauty to ambassadors across Europe, has shut himself away in his own chambers, and he has been weeping for hours. She knows because she can hear him. The royal apartments at Hampton Court are close enough that sound slips through walls built for magnificence, not privacy. And Henry Tudor, King of England, is sobbing like a child who has just learned the world is not what he thought it was. Then the footsteps stop outside her door. A knock follows, formal, official. The kind of knock that brings news no one can escape. "Enter," she says. Her voice does not shake. In 16 months as queen, she has learned how to keep her voice steady even when her heart is racing. The door opens. Archbishop Thomas Cranmer stands in the doorway, his face arranged in an expression of concern that does not quite reach his eyes. Behind him are guards, more guards than anyone would need for a simple midnight visit from the Archbishop of Canterbury. "Your Majesty," Cranmer says, and the title sounds different now. This morning, it was respect. Tonight, it sounds like an accusation. "I come on the king's business," he says. "There are matters that must be discussed." "At this hour?" "The matters are urgent. They concern your conduct before your marriage to His Majesty, and during it." The words hit her like stones dropped into still water. She can feel the ripples moving through her, feel the meaning settling in. Someone has spoken, someone has told, and everything she fought to build, everything she survived to reach, is about to collapse. What you are about to hear is the true story of Katherine Howard's destruction, not the execution itself, which lasted only seconds, but the 3 months of psychological torment that came before it. Most historians focus on the charges: adultery, treason, the betrayal of a king who believed he loved her. They record arrests, confessions, legal proceedings, the machinery that turned a queen into a condemned traitor. But they rarely capture what those 3 months felt like. The isolation, the interrogations, the slow demolition of every relationship she had ever relied on. The horror of waking each morning, not knowing whether she would be forgiven, imprisoned, or killed. Tonight, you will learn what really happened to Katherine Howard. The accusations that began her fall, the confessions drawn out under pressure, the betrayals, the few desperate attempts to save her, the weeks of waiting, the journey to the tower, and the final hours before the blade came down. And most of all, you will understand why what happened before her execution was worse than the execution itself. But to understand Katherine Howard's end, you first have to understand the life she had before she ever wore a crown. Katherine was born around 1523. No one knows the exact date because at the time, no one considered it important enough to record. She was the daughter of Lord Edmund Howard, a man always in debt, always desperate for favor, and rarely able to provide properly for his large family. Her mother died when Katherine was still young. Her father sent her away to the household of her step-grandmother, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, where she was raised among other young relatives and taught the accomplishments expected of a girl who might one day make a decent marriage. But the Dowager Duchess's household was badly supervised. There were dozens of young people there, relations, wards, servants, children. The girls slept together in a large shared chamber known as the Maiden's Dormitory. At night, once the older women had retired and discipline relaxed, things happened there that would later ruin Katherine Howard's life. When Katherine was perhaps 13, her music teacher, Henry Mannix, began paying her special attention. That attention did not remain innocent. Mannix would later testify that he touched her intimately, that she allowed liberties that stopped just short of full intercourse. Whether Katherine truly understood what was happening, whether she consented in any meaningful way, whether a 13-year-old can consent to the attention of an adult teacher, those were not questions Tudor investigators cared to ask. What mattered was simple. Katherine Howard had a sexual past before marrying the king. After Mannix came Francis Derham. Derham was a secretary in the Duchess's household, young, ambitious, attractive. He began visiting the Maiden's chamber at night, like other young men who had realized the supervision there was dangerously lax. But between him and Katherine, something deeper developed. Their relationship was, by every surviving account, sexual. They called each other husband and wife. They exchanged gifts. They spoke as if they might share a future. Later, this would become a crucial legal question. Had they entered into a binding pre-contract of marriage? Because if they had, Katherine's later marriage to Henry VIII might have been invalid from the start. Katherine would deny any such contract. Derham would insist there had been one. The truth likely lies somewhere in the confusion of a secret teenage relationship, carried on without guidance, without protection, and without either of them fully understanding the consequences of the words they used. But here is what matters most for this story. By the time Katherine Howard arrived at court at 16 or 17, she already had a past servants knew about, a past witnesses had seen, a past powerful people could use against her the moment anyone chose to look closely enough. And in November 1541, someone finally did. So let us return to Hampton Court, where Archbishop Cranmer is about to begin. He did not come empty-handed. He brought papers, documents covered in testimony Katherine could not read from where she sat, but she understood at once what they must contain. Statements from people she had known, people she had trusted, people who had apparently decided that saving themselves required destroying her. "Your Majesty," Cranmer began in that same calm, clerical tone, "I must ask you about your time in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, specifically about your relationships with certain men who resided or worked there." "I do not understand what you mean." "I think you do." His voice remained soft, almost gentle. The voice of a priest hearing confession, but there was no mercy in it. "We have received testimony from multiple witnesses, testimony describing conduct unbecoming of a maid, let alone a queen." "What witnesses?" "I am not at liberty to reveal their names at this time, but their accounts are detailed and consistent. They describe intimate contact between yourself and a man named Henry Mannix. They describe a relationship of considerable familiarity with Francis Derham." Then he paused. "And they describe more recent conduct, Your Majesty. Conduct after your marriage to the king. That hit harder than everything else. Before the marriage was shameful. It was humiliating. It could wound Henry's pride. It could destroy the image he had of her. But it might still be survivable. After the marriage was something else. "I have done nothing improper since becoming queen," she said. "The witnesses suggest otherwise. There are accounts of private meetings with a gentleman of the king's privy chamber, a man named Thomas Culpeper." The name seemed to hang in the room. Thomas Culpeper. A man who had shown her kindness when kindness was rare. A man who had looked at her the way Henry once had, before illness and age turned love into possession. A man whose presence had become dangerous long before either of them may have admitted it. "I have spoken with Master Culpeper," she said carefully, "as I have spoken with many gentlemen of the court. There is nothing improper in conversation. The conversations were private. They occurred at night. They were arranged with the assistance of Lady Rochford, who stood watch while you and Master Culpeper were alone." Cranmer's tone never changed. "Tell me, Your Majesty, what requires a lookout if nothing improper is taking place?" She had no answer, not one he would accept. "I must ask you for a full account," Cranmer continued, "of your conduct both before your marriage and during it. You may write it yourself or dictate it, but it must be complete. His Majesty requires complete honesty. And if my account does not match what these witnesses have said, then there will be further questions." He let the silence do the rest. "There are methods," he said quietly, "for determining the truth when accounts conflict." That was enough. Torture was not commonly used on noble women. But others around her could be pressured, threatened, broken. Everyone she cared about could be forced to speak until their words matched what the investigators wanted. "I will write it," she said. "You shall have it by morning. I will wait." And then Cranmer sat down near the door. He was not leaving. He would watch her write. He would take the pages directly from her hands. He would make certain she had no chance to send a message, to prepare a defense, to coordinate her story with anyone else. She was already alone, and now the isolation had truly begun. Before we go any further, you need to understand something about how Tudor investigations worked, because without that, you cannot understand what the next 3 months would do to Catherine Howard. When the Tudor state decided to investigate someone, it did not simply ask questions and accept answers. It dismantled lives. Investigators began by collecting testimony from anyone who might know anything. Servants, relatives, friends, enemies. Everyone was questioned, repeatedly, relentlessly. The goal was not truth in a modern sense. The goal was consistency, and anything inconsistent could be used as evidence of deception. And deception, when it touched the king's honor, was a crime in itself. Those who refused to cooperate were pressured. Minor figures might be threatened with imprisonment or the loss of their position. More important figures could be charged themselves with misprision of treason, with concealing information, with complicity. The system created overwhelming fear, and fear made people talk, even if what they said destroyed someone else. Once enough testimony had been gathered, the focus shifted to the accused. Their statements were compared, line by line, with everything others had said. Any contradiction became proof of guilt. The system was designed to produce confessions, and it almost always succeeded. For Catherine, this meant her fate no longer depended only on what she said, but on what everyone else said. And everyone else was already being questioned under pressure to reveal everything they knew, or thought they knew. That night, with Cranmer watching, Catherine began to write. Every word was a decision: what to admit, what to deny, what to soften, what to hide. She did not know what others had already confessed. She could not match her story to theirs. She could only guess which truths might save her, and which would condemn her. She admitted Henry Mannix. She admitted that he had touched her, that she had allowed liberties she should not have allowed. But she was careful, very careful, to insist that there had been no full intercourse. That detail mattered. It could determine whether her marriage to Henry was considered valid. She admitted Francis Dereham. She admitted the relationship, the intimacy, the nights in the maiden's chamber. But she denied any pre-contract of marriage, denied ever promising to marry him. She framed it as youthful foolishness, something that had happened to her, not something she had fully chosen. And then, she denied Thomas Culpeper. She admitted the meetings. Too many people had seen them to deny that, but she insisted nothing improper had happened. They talked. They exchanged small tokens. Nothing more. No physical intimacy. No betrayal. No adultery. That denial was her gamble. Because adultery, after marriage to the king, was treason, and treason meant death. If she could hold that line, if Culpeper told the same story, then perhaps she might survive. But that hope depended on him. And Katherine would soon learn that Thomas Culpeper was not going to tell the same story. The next morning, everything changed. She was moved from her private chambers at Hampton Court to a smaller suite elsewhere in the palace. Officially, it was temporary, just a change of rooms while matters were resolved. But Katherine understood exactly what it meant. She was being separated, cut off from her household, from her servants, from anyone who might help her shape a defense. She was allowed to keep a few ladies in waiting, but they were carefully chosen. Women whose loyalty belonged first to the king. Women who would report every word she spoke, every tear she shed, every sign of weakness. She never saw Henry again, not once. At first, she had heard him weeping through the walls, but now that grief was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous, rage. Word reached her, filtered through whispers and silence, that the king was calling for a sword so he could kill her himself, that he was declaring her the opposite of everything he believed her to be, that he demanded everyone who had deceived him be hunted down and punished, and so the investigation widened. The Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, Katherine's step-grandmother, was interrogated. Her entire household was examined. Every servant, every witness, every person who had lived there during Katherine's youth was identified and questioned. Henry Mannix was arrested. Francis Dereham was arrested. Thomas Culpeper was arrested. Lady Rochford, Jane Boleyn, widow of Anne Boleyn's brother, the woman who had helped arrange Katherine's meetings, was arrested. One by one, everyone Katherine had ever trusted was taken, and one by one, they began to talk. Mannix confirmed everything. He described their relationship in detail. The private moments Katherine had hoped would remain buried were dragged into the light and turned into evidence of moral corruption. Dereham was worse. Under questioning, possibly under torture, though the records never state it directly, he revealed everything. The nights, the intimacy, the way they had called each other husband and wife. And then he added something Katherine had not confessed. After she became queen, when he came to court looking for employment, she had given him a position. She had kept him close. To the investigators, that detail was devastating. Why would a queen bring a former lover into her household, unless she intended to continue what they had once shared? It did not matter that there could be other explanations, that she might have been afraid of him, that she might have been trying to control a dangerous secret. The interpretation was already decided, but the most damaging testimony came from Culpeper. He had been questioned alone. He did not know what Katherine had written. He did not know what story she was trying to maintain, and he was facing treason, a charge that could end in one of the most horrific deaths imaginable. So Culpeper spoke. He admitted the meetings, the affection. And then, in words that would seal Katherine's fate, he confessed that he intended and meant to do ill with the Queen, and that she likewise minded to do the same with him. Intention. That was enough. Even if nothing physical had happened, and the investigators were not certain either way, the intention to commit adultery with the Queen was itself treason. Katherine denied it. Culpeper confessed it. The stories did not match, and when stories did not match, the system chose the version that caused the most damage. Now take yourself to November 22nd, 1541. Katherine had been held under guard for nearly 3 weeks, questioned again and again, trying, desperately, to explain herself without condemning herself. She had begged to see the king. He never came. Instead, a delegation arrived, and they brought the truth she had been waiting for. She was no longer queen.